Moresby North East MP questions substandard road construction. Manus MP Ronney Knight to appeal his dismissal from office. And Sumkar MP raises concerns on resettlement of landowners.
This is National MTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
This is Friday's news. Good evening and thanks for joining me. Moresby North East MP Labia Mayu has questioned the integrity of the contractor for a substandard road network done on the Erima to 9 Mile Road. Mr. Amayu's statement comes after sections of the 90 million kina road project deteriorated soon after construction this year. MTV's Eric Harupma has this report.
As you can see here,
Mr. Amayu raised this concern after inspecting the recently completed road. He said there were potholes in the middle of the road and cracking signs of bitumen along the roadside.
It's been in this country for too long. Tegana Construction has actually worked in many projects before this road has been built. I just want to know how or what sort of ingredients used to construct this road from Erima to 9 Mile. Because as you can see, this is very disturbing.
Mr. Amayu said while the national government has invested millions of kina in this road infrastructure, there should be quality work done. The member for North East said the road was barely 6 months but shows cracking signs.
Contractors who have been given, the responsibility to construct such big roads like this are roads that will create legacy, that will change the mindset and the way people look at our nation's capital, must do it with due diligence.
Mr. Amayu has informed Minister for Works, Francis Awisa, through a letter expressing his dissatisfaction of the work done.
NCDC system has been regulating these roads, but I hope our engineers, and these are one major problem that I think we are all facing. We should have qualified engineers checking such projects like this.
He has appealed to contractors in NCD to be passionate about their job and take heed of necessary measures while constructing road project. He said the road construction and building infrastructure development is in preparation for the South Pacific Games and the 2018 APEC Summit and has to be of standard. Eric Harupma, National MTV News.
Manus MP Ronney Knight has been recommended for dismissal from office after finding him guilty of misappropriation. The Leadership Tribunal today suspended the member from office for a period of 40 days. The member has indicated he will challenge the decision through a judicial review. The member was referred by the Ombudsman Commission to the public prosecutor in July last year for misconduct in office. It was alleged that the leader misapplied public funds belonging to the Manus District Services Improvement Funds by purchasing a passenger and cargo vessel, the MV Trader SAR, at an inflated price. The decision today allows Mr. Knight to appeal within these 40 days. Failing to do so will result in him being automatically dismissed. National Parliament Speaker Theo Zurino will formally announce in the next session the dismissal of Mr. Knight as a Member of Parliament. However, the member maintains his innocence and his lawyers will be filing for a judicial review in the coming days. Tenants at a National Housing Corporation flats in Port Moresby are questioning an eviction notice served by a private law firm this week. The tenants say no NHC officer has briefed them or served prior notices to this. Tenants were surprised by this move and say the notice looks suspicious.
Tenant Olive Pusahai has lived for almost 30 years in this NHC flat of Section 13 Lot 2 in Boroko's 5 Mile area. She was confronted by a lawyer from a private law firm this week Tuesday with a notice to evict families occupying the property. Olive says the notice looks bogus and questions why National Housing Corporation officers were not present to advise tenants or accompany the lawyer when serving the notice.
You must follow the procedures and do the right thing. You put yourself in our shoes. Where would we be if you do that?
4 families are residing in these 2 duplex flats. They say life won't be the same if the new developer moves in to demolish this area. EMTV understands a private company has bought the area without the tenant's knowledge. Tenant Mamata Dumo, an employee of the fire service, says the land is a state land and officers involved in the sale of property must explain.
The National Housing Corporation did not advise us in advance. If they are trying to sold this house, where will we be?
A senior officer from the National Housing Corporation says the sale of the property will be looked into as it is serious. He says people involved bypassed processes. Tenants here will be meeting NHC officers next week Monday over the eviction notice. Similar evictions are becoming common in and around the city, with tenants calling for authorities to come down hard on officers involved. Jagla Pave Jr., National MTV News.
Meanwhile, a former National Housing Corporation officer told MTV News properties including flats or duplex are not allowed to be sold. The officer said according to the Finance Management Act, selling such properties are illegal. He said officers involved in preparing land titles and NHC management must be held responsible. Sumkar MP Ken Fairweather has raised concerns about the resettlement of the Sek clan because their land has been taken up for Medang's Pacific Marine Industrial Zone. 4 days ago, the Kananam people called on the government to hear and answer to their plight before the PMIZ exploits their resources. Our reporter, Bethany Harriman, takes another look into the plight of the Kananam people.
While Medang's Pacific Marine Industrial Zone remains a hot topic that draws to attention issues ranging from socio-economic, environmental and land issues, majority of politicians have remained quiet. But those key political heads are driving for the project to happen, with pressure being put into the formation of integrated landowner groups. But Sumkar MP Ken Fairweather has raised concerns about the plight of the Sek clan, who own much of the land that the PMIZ will be built on.
Cargo cult mentality. I'm not thinking ahead. You know, the people of Sek Island, that is in that industrial lease. Where are they going to go?
The Sek clan have spoken of being marginalized on their own land. Some of the land was taken in the colonial era, and ownership was shifted between the church and the government. Recently, their land has been taken up for the PMIZ project. The Sumkar MP's concerns comes 3 days after landowners held this canoe protest. The protest was held to draw government attention to the waste damage on their traditional fishing grounds that will be caused by 10 proposed canneries. Landowners have learnt hard lessons from the RD Tuna cannery that operates on what used to be traditional land. Nancy Sullivan, an anthropologist who has been following the PMIZ saga, explains people will be looking for opportunities for jobs, education and land to build homes.
None of the industry players really want to get an environmental picture of this because they would have to pay for the environmental costs that it would be. So,
Bethany Harriman, National MTV News.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill commends Don Bosco for its educational contribution in the country. I'll bring you that story plus many more coming up after the break. Thanks for your company and welcome back to the news. A new initiative called PNG Education Robotic Lab was launched at the Institute of Business Studies yesterday. The aim of this initiative is to enhance learning in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Facilitator Shahram Honazad from the Rural Tech Development stressed that his organization is hoping to see innovative-based learning practiced through robotics in classrooms.
One of the main ideas behind the launch is to introduce to schools in PNG the fun side of learning with robots and also the educational benefits that come with it.
My project is to introduce robotic or the concept of robotic to the education and use them for an educational purpose.
Sehram Honarzad is from Iran and has been living in PNG for many years. Seeing the need to introduce the concept of robotics in the country, he is planning on visiting more schools to educate students about the benefits of his initiative.
But in PNG, the idea was because of many students that came to me, many IT people who are unemployed. We found them they don't have that much practical skill after the school. So, and there's a worldwide movement about using gadgetries to enhance the education. Okay, and what we're trying to do is basically bring the robots. So PNG is not behind the other countries.
He says after mobile phone and computer technologies comes the concept of robots. He further explains that his initiative, if incorporated successfully into schools, it will help students in many different ways.
It's up to the students to what sort of projects and how they're using it. What we're saying, if you bring enough platform, okay, whether it's the hand robot, whether it's a driving robot, whether it's moving robots, if you bring all this one, okay, the students can utilize them. And
engineering, information technology, and science and mathematics students have learned a lot from the launch. They were amazed by the sight of Now, one of the humanoid robots, during the launching, and were given the opportunity to ask further questions and touch the different types of robots.
It's a new thing to PNG, and if they would introduce it to our education system, it would be not only fun, but it would be a totally new experience, and also it would, increase learning here.
Sehram says robotics is for everyone. He says the robotic lab was designed especially for classroom purposes. However, he is planning to open a robot club anytime soon for any interested person to learn how to create a robot. Yvonne Kambibel, National MTV News.
Settlers of 9 Mile Kukipi block outside of Port Moresby will remain in the land despite an eviction notice served by police. A restraining order sought by a local MP, Labia Mayu, has guaranteed the settlers to stay while the matter is brought before the National Court.
The fate of evicting residents living at the 9 Mile Kupiki block, section 22, allotment 2, 3, 4 and 5 will be decided in court. This follows the intervention by local MP Labi Amayu, who issued a restraining order preventing the removal of his people by certain individuals who had obtained land title from the Lands Department.
The current situation, they haven't been given the opportunity to, actually apply for that lease, or given that opportunity to at least allow them to, survey and actually subdivide those portions of land for them to take ownership on.
Mr. Amayu said these people have the right to live in the area while due processes are taken to solve this matter in court.
Know that there are also other human beings also having the same interest and sitting on the very land they have actually taken ownership of. So the 5 blocks is it's too much for one family. If they have any plan for development, and if they have actually spent their own money in terms of how they've gone about surveying, as what they have said today.
He said these people, in one way or the other, have contributed to the economic development of NCD, and it is unbecoming for a particular individual to remove the majority living in the area.
Minister and even the Secretary for Lands Department to at least assess the situation and the land people are occupying before making a head of decision for to give the ownership to other people who have no form of development or no form of investment on this land.
This portion of land was mainly settled by the Kukipi people of Gulf Province for at least 10 generations. Eric Aruma, National MTV News.
While the PNG government is working on a plan to establish Human Rights Commission offices, questions of its existence have been raised. In a conference held earlier this week, LLG presidents in Leh districts have raised concerns over possible delays of setting up the office. This comes after human rights related issues in Leh alone continue to grow over the last 40 years as people have nowhere to turn to for help.
Over the last 40 years, Papua New Guinea has come under criticisms over its outstanding human rights issues. The blame has been put on the absence of human rights office in the country to cater to these issues. This year, an attempt to address these issues, the Human Rights Commission will establish its offices for the first time in many years. Earlier this week, the Human Rights Commission visited Leh to do awareness and sought public opinion about the existence of the office. What has come to the fore during the discussion were questions raised on how soon will the office be established.
We are waiting for the next sitting of Parliament. Is this for the, sorry, I'm not in Labour. Is this for a bill to be passed in the floor of Parliament? Is that correct?
The success of the office depends on a decision that will be made by the cabinet later on this month. In the last 10 years, there hasn't been any big step taken to address the human rights issues in the country. Papua New Guineans who brought their issues through legal system were denied from pursuing their concerns in court simply because there were no office in place to support those who fell victim to instances of human rights violation.
PNG, I think we can talk about we are way behind in terms of establishing office. We are the only country in the world that has no National Human Rights Commission office.
The recent move taken by the Human Rights Commission of Papua New Guinea is seen as a real attempt to solve Papua New Guinea's growing human rights concerns, and Moresby province alone already has a backlog of these issues to deal with. Edwin Fidelis, National MTV News, Leh.
A report by an independent firm, KPMG, for British American Tobacco shows that more than 10% of cigarettes consumed are illegally smuggled into the country. This has resulted in the government losing more than 26 million in excise revenue every year. According to BAT, the issue can be resolved if harsh penalties are imposed.
According to the report, in 2013, 11% of the cigarettes consumed in PNG are illicit products. Not only is it burdening the government's revenue, but is also a health hazard to consumers as the source of manufacturing is unknown. Vanimo, Medang, Leh, Banten-Juaka Province and Western Highlands Province are the hotspots where illegal tobacco is sold. Most of the illegal or counterfeit cigarettes are smuggled in from Indonesia from the Batas market.
The reality is, if we don't do anything, this situation is just going to grow, and the impact on everybody is just going to get worse. The government will lose more revenue. Obviously, the legal tobacco industry will get affected because we'll lose volume, because that volume will go to illegal trade, illegal tobacco products. Which obviously for us, potentially has implications in terms of, reduced employment, because if our volumes go down, we don't need as many people to make tobacco products. The flow-on impact on that.
Homegrown brews represents 58% of the tobacco market in PNG. If taxed, it would generate the government 102.8 million kina each year. PNG BAT has taken steps to identify local brews farmers in certain parts of PNG to make them commercial sellers by marketing their fresh-grown brews to the company.
Transition them from local subsistence backyard growers of tobacco to become more commercial farmers with their product flowing in to our product. We can use some of that local tobacco in our products now and have excise paid on it. It's a win-win for everybody. So, like I said, it's not an illegal thing, but it's how can we get a bit more inclusive as part of the broader excise paid segment.
Meanwhile, PNG BAT General Manager Michael Penrose said BAT is the legitimate business trading in PNG, and he's urging the government to protect their operations and contribution to the country. Currently, the penalty for smuggling illegal tobacco in PNG is 2,000 kina. The enforcement of the penalties is still unstable, which allows smugglers to bring in illegal cigarettes. Mr. Penrose wants the government to impose harsh penalties and strengthening border controls while resourcing enforcement agencies. Vasenata Yama, National MTV News.
And now we take a look at the finance news. The kina closed unchanged at $0.3715 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, our kina was fetching $0.364, $0.4573 Australian dollars, $0.3206 euro, and 43.04 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, coffee and gold closed the day lower, while cocoa and copper closed higher. Palm oil, copper and crude oil all closed the day higher. And finally, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 195 points lower, the ASX closed at 24 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 26 points higher. Plenty more still to come on National EMTV News tonight. Pacific leaders debate the inclusion of Australia and New Zealand in the Pacific Island Forum. Also, the latest on the devastation in Nepal and the executions in Indonesia. Stay with us for the details. Good to have you back with National EMTV News. Turning overseas now, 6 days after the massive Nepal earthquake, more than 5,000 people have been killed and over 10,000 injured in the country's worst earthquake in more than 80 years. The 7.8 magnitude quake rocked the impoverished nation on Saturday, toppling thousands of buildings in Kathmandu Valley and triggering avalanches in mountainous regions. Rescue helicopters have been unable to land in some remote areas, such as the worst-hit district of Gorkha, as entire hillsides have collapsed, barring settlements and making access almost impossible. Government officials admit aid has been slow due to broken bridges and roads blocked by landslides. The UN, which launched a $415 million appeal on Wednesday as survivors grew frustrated at the slow delivery of aid, estimates that 8 million people have been affected by the quake. And if you're watching right now and you're interested in donating to the devastation in Nepal, you can do so by depositing to a BSP branch. The details are shown as per your screen. Account name, Non-Residents Nepali Association Inc. Account number 600-474-6072, and you can make it out to the Waigani branch. BSP number 038007, Swift code PPACGPM. And you can email the deposit slip and your details to the following. That's sabine.sharma@gmail.com. And before that, you can also email it to rshahi@cpl.com.pg. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon regrets Indonesia's execution of 8 drug traffickers despite desperate pleas from their governments to spare their lives. A UN spokesman aired the General Secretary's statement urging the Indonesian government to exercise its authority and recall all death sentences. UN Deputy Spokesman Farhan Haq delivered Ban Ki-moon's statement.
Despite numerous calls in the country and internationally for a reprieve, he again urges the government to exercise its authority and commute all death sentences.
4 Nigerians, 2 Australians, a Brazilian and an Indonesian were executed by a firing squad on Nusa Kambangan as family members held a candlelight vigil within earshot of the firing range. United Nations Human Rights Agency spokesman Rupert Colville describes Indonesia's action as incomprehensible.
Really incomprehensible is Indonesia, when its own nationals, when Indonesians are facing the death penalty in other countries, for example recently in Saudi Arabia, Indonesia intervenes and asks for clemency for their citizens. So it's really incomprehensible why they then don't listen to exactly the same kind of plea for lesser offences.
Both Australia and Brazil, which oppose capital punishment, have rallied against President Widodo's move to step up the pace of executions after a 5-year moratorium.
To stop this horrible spectacle of people being executed, and particularly for for offences that don't involve murder or intentional killing.
However, the Indonesian government maintains the executions are a law enforcement issue that defines its sovereignty. Indonesia's Attorney General, Muhammad Prasetyo, said all judicial processes were followed. The mass execution cements the hard line on enforcing the death penalty adopted by Indonesian President Joko Widodo as part of his war on drugs, an approach criticized by the United Nations as applying double standards. And on the same note, there were mixed reactions from the public here in Papua New Guinea, Australia and Indonesia on the recent executions. Let's hear what some of them had to say.
The death penalty is fair. The punishment they received is equal to what they did. I think the Indonesian government, especially President Joko Widodo, is firm enough to not give them clemency. And this is a lesson for drug traffickers in Indonesia, so that they will be alert and not bring drugs into Indonesia. They have to respect the law in Indonesia. Indonesian law is ruled based on the constitutional law. For example, the anti-drug law says if you're arrested, then you will get a death sentence. I think the countries with a citizen on death row have to respect our law.
It's terrible. That's too barbaric in this day and age. They did 10 years. That was plenty enough punishment.
They know the rules when they go into there. You know, they got big signs saying, you know, drugs, trafficking drugs, yeah, it's death penalty. So they take the risk to reap the benefits. But it's sad they've gone. But
and I think it was a mistake for them to be executed. They should have just had a prison sentence.
Maybe there's a better way of dealing with this kind of issues instead of death penalties.
With those two Aussies, look, yeah, they got killed and it's sad, but the bottom line is they were in another country. You adhere to the laws of the land. I don't come to your house and treat your house like crap, you know? You respect the laws, everything will be fine. Plus, they're breaking the law.
Indonesia has their rules, and they do kind of have to stick to them. And I don't believe that the punishment actually fit the crime.
Trukai Sports is coming up next, and the All Search Baton Relay team continues their journey in Hela Province. Plus more. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. Well, history will be made tomorrow night when the PNG Kumuls take on Fiji in an official test match at the Gold Coast in Queensland. In a groundbreaking doubleheader, the Kumuls versus Fiji match, which kicks off at 5:30 p.m, will be followed by a showdown between Tonga and Samoa. Kumuls coach Mal Meninga faces a tough task to match the Fijians, who have a large number of NRL stars in their squad.
Kumuls arrived on the Gold Coast last Monday determined to prove that their squad, made up of mostly interest Super Cup players, could match it with the more highly fancied Fijians. But coach Mal Meninga remains upbeat.
They're playing against the Fijians a challenge, and you know they've got something like 10 National Rugby League players playing in their squad who are all great players, you know, so it's a challenge for us, but you know, all around good preparation. The boys have been excellent, you know, we've trained well, they're all getting on really well, so I'm confident and I'm excited about new faces in the footy team as well, so you know we'll give a good account of ourselves.
The side had its second last training run yesterday at the luxury Royal Pines Golf Resort. However, heavy rain made conditions difficult. Captaining the side will once again be Star Hunters 5'8" Israel Eliab. It's another chance for PNG players to impress NRL clubs.
Yeah, it's another opportunity for us, the boys, to showcase our talent and just play wherever we have to play, wherever we plan to execute on that day.
The Kumuls could well have the edge with teamwork and passion. The players, mostly from the Hunters program, know each other's game, whereas the Fijians have many new fresh faces.
A young footy side, and you know, if they do really well tomorrow on Saturday night, you know, it holds us some pretty good stead for the World Cup, and that's our ultimate game.
Yeah, definitely. I think 9 of us, especially the boys, we play Hunters. It's 9 of us in the team, so it's a good thing that the combination is there. Just a few boys from here, the local boys from here, just adding some flavors to the team, so we'll be okay. I will be looking good for the game on Saturday.
The Pacific Nations Test match will start at 5:30 p.m. at the Seabus Stadium, the home of the Gold Coast Titans. Elijah Lavette, National MTV Sports.
On the same note, a media conference was held this morning for the captains and coaches of the 4 teams taking part in the Pacific Test. Here's what some of them had to say.
Oh, there are plenty of cyclones up in Papua New Guinea, so we're sweet. You know, we train playing it all the time, so I think it's going to blow over, isn't it?
Both Mal Meninga and Israel Eliab talked about the pressure of expectancy from their home fans.
It's a big thing for us to perform every week, but you know, every boys just go out and play and make sure they just do whatever they have to do to win games, because people back home expect us to perform to that level.
There is a really strong expectation that the team is successful. You know, they come back from the World Cup, unfortunately, not doing as well as expected. However, you know, my job is to, you know, from an internal point of view, is to take the pressure off the players.
Fiji Bati's coach Rick Stone denies his team are red-hot favourites.
We've got a lot of young players, you know, and probably well and truly untried at this level. You know, we've got, you know, a group of players that have played for Fiji before, and no doubt Mal's got a group of players that have played at the highest level as well.
Dreadful weather on the Gold Coast and Brisbane resulted in not having a captain's run at the Seabus Stadium as planned. The both coaches say the rain in the lead-up hasn't affected their preparations. Elijah Lavette, National EMTV Sports.
The Oil Search Baton Relay continued its journey around the country. It has now made its way into Hela Province from New Ireland Province. While in Kavieng, the National Fisheries Authority had the opportunity to take the baton out for a boat cruise. EMTV's Jeremy Moggy has all the highlights.
The first destination was the Lisanon Island Resort, known for its great local dive sites. The Baton taking a swim in the crystal clear waters with a local diver emerging from the sea to pass to waiting staff on the beach. The Baton going around the island, ending up on another classic white sandy beach with staff giving a message to PNG athletes.
Go PNG!
The Baton continued its journey aboard the Pokemon to the fisheries resort facility on Nago Island. The residents waiting patiently on the jetty where they were to receive the Baton. After a quick tour through the facilities, the relay team had the opportunity to view some of the research being achieved at the facility. Sea slugs being bred to help their numbers in the coastal waters after being harvested to near extinction in the area. Ornamental fish also being bred to help ensure the colorful fish of PNG reefs would remain plentiful. The Baton made its way via canoe to the oyster farms just offshore, then returned to the beach where it was passed along. The relay team bidding farewell, the Baton taking the opportunity for a quick ride on the jet ski. The last stop for the day, Nusu Island Resort, the well-known surfing retreat in the area. Kids on canoes paddling the Baton across the passage. With the sun fading, the Baton took the opportunity for one last swim to finish up the day. The Oil Search Baton relay journey continues. Jeremy Moggy, National EMTV Sports.
Well, Trukai Sports continues after the break. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. The Japanese Ekiden Committee has plans to introduce the Japanese sport of Ekiden to Papua New Guinea. A representative was in the country this week to seek approval and support from the Office of the Minister for Sports and Pacific Games, Justin Chichenko, to introduce Ekiden to PNG.
Sport of Ekiden refers to long-distance road relays, but instead of using a baton like regular relay running, they use a cloth sash which they pass on to the next runner.
The sport of Ekiden has teams consisting of up to 5 to 10 members and can total up to over 100 runners.
Through Ekiden, Papua New Guinea will receive valuable publicity in Japan, which will result in the increased awareness among Japanese people about PNG. And it shall be an avenue used to better the relationship between PNG and Japan.
Papua New Guineans in Japan took an interest in the sport of Ekiden and thought it would be fitting to introduce the sport to Papua New Guinea.
Ekiden may be seen as a unique model for not just being a sport, but embrace historical, educational, and cultural associations and possibilities through the sport of Ekiden.
We are planning on hosting the first Ekiden event on the 20th of June at the Woodstrip Primary School.
The Ekiden Committee believes that the educational, social, cultural, and economical benefits to PNG from such a function will by far outweigh any material considerations. Elijah Lavette, National EMTV Sports.
The Port Moresby AFL Premiership is set to kick off on the 9th of May. Tairama Suns and Lamana Dockers are anticipated to dominate the season, with favourites University Tigers in the men's division. University Tigers are also confident of retaining a third title in the women's division.
Port Moresby's AFL competition wrapped up its pre-season last weekend. 10 men's team and 6 women's team took to the pitch to participate.
We just have, one team to just play just to see numbers coming in, and that's been ongoing for the last 2 years.
With Bissini still under construction for the Pacific Games, AFL was forced to find an alternative venue to conduct its annual season. AFL PNG was able to secure the Murray Barracks Oval for its junior competition, Tarama Barracks for its secondary school competition, and the University of Papua New Guinea Oval for its senior competition.
Venues has been a very big issue for nearly, not only AFL but other colleges as well, soccer, softball, and cricket, rugby union as well. We're just so lucky to. A very big thank you to the University of Papua New Guinea.
In the men's division, Underdogs, Gulf Giants and Central Bombers will be the teams to look out for come season proper, with favourites University Tigers and last year's grand finalists Lamana Dockers and Moni Plus Tarama Suns predicted to dominate the season.
Lamana Dockers and Moni Plus Tarama Suns will be the favourites for the season, but there are a couple of clubs coming through, the Defence, Bomber Cats, the Captain Boys as well, and University Tigers.
The women's competition is into its third year. The University Tigers have retained the title for a second year after beating Tarama Suns in last year's grand final, and both teams are deemed as favourites for this season. Season proper for the secondary schools and senior competition is set to kick off on the 9th of May. Scholar Sengi, National EMTV Sports.
The Telecom National Soccer League will round off its proper season 14 this weekend, with all matches to be played at the CIS College Bomana here in the nation's capital. Hekari United will take on Ley City Dwellers in a match that will decide the Telecom National Soccer League's minor premiership. MTV Shan Saroya has more.
A win by the reigning champions, Hekari United, will guarantee a 10th consecutive minor premiership title and tick to the OFC Champions League next year.
Champions League, Hekari.
Strikers Joaquim Waroy and Tommy Sami will lead the attack up front with David Muta and Emmanuel Simon to control the game in the midfield, while the long-time serving Fijian defender Peter Bolaitoga will muscle up the defense for the Reds. The Fijian will play his last game with Hekari and would want to leave a lasting memory for his club. Meanwhile, Ley City Dwellers dynamic duo Raymond Guneba and Nigel Debinyaba, who are both former Hekari players and now part of Ley City Dwellers, rise this year. The duo have been consistent time and time again throughout the season, and this Sunday will decide if the Ley City Dwellers are the genuine contenders for the OFC Champions League next year, or just another second best in the competition. In the matches, FC Pom will take on Oro FC to decide on their hopes of making the finals if they beat Oro. Medang will be expected to make a comeback after devastating loss to Hekari last weekend, this time with Admiralty FC, and Besta FC will be on a bye. Shane Saroya, National EMTV Sports.
To Rugby League, the Anzac Test match between the Australian Kangaroos and the New Zealand Kiwis has been postponed for the first time ever in Australia after torrential rain hit Brisbane ahead of tonight's match. Organisers monitored the Southern Suncorp Stadium before making a final call on the test tonight. The match will now be played on Sunday. Well, True Guys Sports ends on that note. I'll be back with the weather details for the next 24 hours after these short messages. Stay with us.
True Kai Sports. True Kai Sports.
A quick look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours. In Port Moresby, thundery showers expected. Rain plus thunder and storms expected in Daru. Popondetta, few showers. In Momase region, late to look forward to a few showers, a shower or two in Madang. In the New Guinea Islands, thundery showers expected in Buka and Kimbe, including Kokopo and Rabaul. And lastly, in the Highlands region, all centres to look forward to showers and thunderstorms. Before we go, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has commended the efforts of the Don Bosco Solution in helping to educate and guide young Papua New Guineans. He shared these sentiments at a reception dinner held last night at the Don Bosco Technical Institute Hall to celebrate 200 years since the birth of Saint Don Bosco.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says churches in the country have illustrated the importance in guiding men and women to improve their lives and careers over the years, and acknowledges Don Bosco for being at the forefront in providing skills and education to many of our citizens. He said the recent government initiative to establish a church partnership program has provided many good opportunities in our communities.
Our country's population, close to 50% of the population is below 25 years of age. That is why nurturing them is an important part of any government, and of course the partnership that we have with the churches in the country is one we value.
With the government's free education policy adding an additional 1 million children into schools throughout the country, the Prime Minister says the program could not be achieved without the support of church-funded institutions like Don Bosco. The Prime Minister said to match the ongoing economic growth, the nation needed more skilled workers to ensure the continuity of growth.
As I said, our government is now continuously funding directly to the churches for education and health care that they continue to provide for our citizens. It is a partnership that we value. It is a partnership that we want to continue to strengthen.
The reception was hosted at the Don Bosco Technical Institute Hall to commemorate the bicentenary of the Brotherhood and at the same time welcome the 10th successor of Saint John Bosco, the Rector Major Father Angel Fernandez Artime from Rome, who is on a visiting mission to PNG and the Solomon Islands. The Rector Major is the third Saint John Bosco successor to visit Papua New Guinea. With his delegation, Rector Major Artime visited Gabutu today to celebrate Youth Day with the locals and will be officiating at the formation of the Don Bosco Salesian family tomorrow before leaving for the Solomon Islands on Sunday. Vanessa Knight, National EMTV News.
In regional news, Samoa's Prime Minister has condemned Fiji's decision to not attend the Pacific Islands Forum in September, with Australia and New Zealand remain as partners. Fiji's Foreign Affairs Minister Ratu Inoke Kambuolo told Australian officials in early April that Australia and New Zealand should withdraw their full membership from the forum. PNG is hosting the forum this year.
Recently elected Fiji Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama said Australia and New Zealand should instead shift their status to observers or development partners. Samoa Prime Minister Tuilaepa Malia Lagawi dismissed the idea as nonsense, mocking Bainimarama's military background and referring to the poor economic status of the forum's 14 members, saying Australia and New Zealand's funding role is critical to the forum's agendas. The Samoan PM called for the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat to be moved out of Fiji and wants that to be an agenda of the forum meeting in September here in PNG. In a statement last week, he said,
"If Bainimarama is serious with his plan not to come in, he must formally inform the president of the forum of his government's intention through the Secretary General of the forum, and leaders must then decide at the forthcoming meeting in Papua New Guinea to move the forum secretariat out of Fiji. That is the issue leaders must discuss at its next forum meeting in PNG."
Last week, the Fiji PM labelled Malia Lagawi as a lapdog and criticised Australia and New Zealand's leadership and implementation of commitments to climate change. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, this year's forum chair, spoke out on Fiji's standpoint last November, telling Radio Australia,
"We must make sure that we don't forget that we all live in the same region, and Australia and New Zealand are very much part of that region. But Pacific countries also need to trade with the growing influence in Asia to deal with India and China as the two biggest economies in that region."
Bainimarama told the ABC that Australia and New Zealand are not really part of the Pacific, saying Fiji has had to look to countries like China, India and Russia instead. While O'Neill has also agreed on Pacific engagement with India and China, he said Pacific nations should not neglect their traditional ties with Australia and New Zealand.
We need to stay engaged and in line with what we are trying to achieve in terms of making sure our people take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us.
Alana Lay, EMTV World News.
Well, that report wraps up our bulletin on this Friday night, the 1st of May 2015. As always, from the news team, I'm Tokana Hasavi. Thanks heaps for your company. You have a safe weekend. Good night.